I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So a deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours. I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many areas of our life, and which I have spent my professional career writing about and talking about and dealing with, writing about in my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller on manipulation, and my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, the book that explains all the various types of disturbed characters you're likely to encounter in your life and how to understand them, deal with them, and especially what to look for in the way of help when you go seeking help for those problems. And then my book, The Judas Syndrome, for those in the Christian faith community, and also my book with Kathy Armistead, How Did We End Up Here? Toxic Relationship Survivor's Guide to Thriving and Surviving in this character-disturbed world of ours. And if you want to join the conversation tonight, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I've heard from 3 or 4 people this week who wanted to call in and were having trouble getting through. And as you know, I've been talking about this the last several times when we've been on live. There's been some kind of a technical issue that we haven't been able to resolve too successfully, but we're thinking we're on the right track tonight, at any rate. And some folks have even gone through some extra measures to make sure they can get through. I appreciate that. We'll do our best. But once again, the number to call is 718-717-8296, and I'll be happy to take your call. Well, what a week it has been for me. I just finished my last workshop tour of the year in Maryland, of all places, in the Baltimore area, 2 venues in the Baltimore area, and then in Frederick, Maryland, in the western part of the state, the northwestern part of the state. And it was a really a great experience. I talked to some clinicians who are on the cutting edge, who seem to be getting it with respect to dealing with the phenomenon of our age. And I was really happy about that, because many of them actually have witnessed firsthand what I talk about in some of my online articles and in my books about the experience many folks have trying to get help, perhaps when they're in a relationship with a character disturbed person, and they go into joint therapy with a therapist who's not familiar enough with character disturbance or how to approach the problem. And then these folks unfortunately experience what we call therapy induced trauma, where they went for help and only ended up feeling worse. And so really, I was really happy to find a group of folks in all three locations who knew very well this phenomenon, understood it, and wanted to make sure that they were of the right mindset to help folks who came to them with problems, especially if it was someone coming to them who had a relationship partner with a serious character disturbance. So I was just so edified about that. I'm also really happy that it's my last tour of the year. I don't start back until mid-January next year, and I can really use the time off. Believe me, it's been a real gruel this year. I'm happy to do the workshops. It's energizing for me, but travel these days is pretty much a gruel, especially airline travel out of smaller cities, having to connect through hubs. Many times, I found, I don't know whether you found the same thing, but many times I found that by the time you're through getting transported to the airport or getting transported from your off-site parking or even on-site parking, then going through security, getting there as early as you have to get all checked in, get through security, even if you're TSA pre-check. I had two TSA pre-check experiences where it didn't matter that I was TSA pre-check because those lines were closed, both going and coming. So it didn't matter one bit. But you add all that together, plus the hubs that you have to go through to make connecting flights and the layover times that you typically have. And many times, by the time you actually get to your destination and get to where you're going at your destination, you're within maybe an hour or so of being able to make the drive. And you're paying a premium price for the tickets too. So it's not any faster. Many times it's certainly not more comfortable, especially on the commuter side of things when you're leaving from a regional airport and taking a regional size jet. So my goodness, it's a gruel. It's not the same as it used to be. It's not as fun as it used to be. And I can tell you that I'm really happy to be taking a break here. As much as I really love doing the workshops and bringing the message to folks who I know appreciate it, I'm so glad to be taking a few weeks off. Got tons of Christmas shopping to do. Got lots of things to prepare for. Lots of work to catch up on. And so I'm glad to be taking a hiatus. But I did get a new article posted on the blog at my manipulative-people.com site. And I encourage you to mosey on over there and take advantage of the hundreds of articles there, timely articles that can help you deal with a lot of different situations in your life. And I also want to invite, in addition to any other caller, any of the folks that I've talked to at workshops who have questions or comments or who just have something that they want to share that they think would be of interest to the audience, give us a call here at 718-717-8296, and I'm happy to take your call. That's 718-717-8296. Well, what a week it's been in the news as well. We have another unfortunate incident last week at Ohio State University. And my heart goes out to those who were victims in this attack and their families. It is just fortunate, very fortunate, that no one appears to have been fatally injured. And that's just a real fortunate circumstance. But I read the commentary in the newspapers and listen to the talking heads on TV, and I'm still seeing this politically correct speech about how we still don't know yet officially what kind of ties. We don't find evidence. The FBI does not find evidence of direct ties to ISIS or to any other radical Islamic group. And, this is kind of a no-brainer in my mind. I think there's a little bit of hyper caution going on here. These ideologies, I've written about them before. It's not the first time they visited us. And it's not just this current batch of radical Islam. This ideology has been with us before, too, by the way. I think I've mentioned to you, perhaps I have, perhaps I haven't, perhaps you haven't remembered it if I did, but this issue touches dear to my heart because in my family, my dear grandmother, on my mother's side, my maternal grandmother, was a victim of the Armenian genocide. She, fortunately, her life was spared, but only because she was under the age of conversion. At the hands of the Ottoman Turks, there was a genocide of the Armenian people, but these folks were 95% Christian. And the Ottoman Turks were an Islamic empire. And the only question they asked was whether or not you were willing to convert or die. And my grandmother was not of age to give consent. But she had to watch her entire family get butchered before her, a very large family. And she was fortunate to have survived for days in the wilderness, eating grass, and eventually taken to an orphanage run by some Catholic sisters of charity. So these kinds of ideologies have visited us before. It's nothing new. And radical ideologies of all types, have visited us. And in my experience studying character, there are only a few kinds of characters that are really attracted to these things. These things don't happen by accident. And brainwashing by remote control is very difficult. You have to have a mind that is ripe for the picking. You have to have a mind that is both sensitive to and receptive to the messages of hate, the messages of superiority, the messages of exclusion, the messages of entitlement and justification that are contained in these ideologies. And, if I should if I should ever be able to do it, it would be a project that really I don't think I could successfully undertake. But I'm seriously considering it. It's really time that we took an honest look at ourselves as a species and what really makes us tick and what really gives rise to these crazy justifications, these ideologies that give us permission to do the horrible things that we've done to one another. I think my books in some way address that, but they don't really deeply so. But that's a task. Right now, my primary objective is to finish the book that I've been hanging up now for almost 7 months, but haven't been able to finish the edits on because I've been traveling so extensively. And that's my second book with Dr. Kathy Armistead on the 10 Commandments of Character. These are the essential life lessons that a person has to master in order to be a person of decent character. They're the 10 important life lessons that hopefully we learn and master as we're growing and developing into young adulthood. But they're the same lessons that we would have to learn, even if we have failed to learn those lessons as we entered adulthood and became, therefore, a disturbed or disordered character of one type or another, and our lives and the lives of those around us especially were a shipwreck. They are still the same lessons that have to be learned and mastered. And I've been writing about them on my blog at manipulative-people.com. I'm on commandment number 8 right now. So if you mosey on over to manipulative-people.com, you can really get a preview of what I'm going to be writing about in this book. And you're going to be not only getting a preview, but you're going to be able to learn my sentiments about those important life lessons that all of us have to learn to be people of decent character. And so I'm happy to have the time now that I'm finished with my touring for the most part. It's not like I don't have other things going on. I do, but I should be able to reserve the time to put the finishing touches on the book and get busy with getting it out there. I had hoped that by the end of the year it would be ready, but I'm afraid it looks like it's going to be at the very least the beginning of the year before it is. But I'll just have to keep you posted. But look for relatively soon the 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life. And mosey on over to manipulative-people.com and take advantage of the postings over the past several weeks. We're up to commandment number 8 now, talking about the importance of disciplining our aggressive instincts and how important that is, especially for those individuals who have those aspects of their personality that predispose them to becoming more aggressive personalities. So take a trip on over to manipulative-people.com and take advantage of the more recent postings over the past couple of months and look for the 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life in the coming weeks. I'll keep you posted as to progress on that. Once again, if you want to join the conversation tonight, number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. 717-8296. If you want to join the conversation, I'm happy to take your call. I had someone who wrote to me a while back, and it really touched my heart. I had someone who wrote to me a while back talking about America, My Home. And, this song is dear to me, and it plays at the beginning of the program and at the end of the program. And it was a true inspiration because, frankly, folks, I am not the world's best musician. The only instrument I play halfway decently is my voice, and I have sung for a number of years. And even that is not what it used to be because of some vocal cord dysfunction that I've been suffering ever since some upper spinal cord problems started plaguing me about 7 years ago. So even that is not a strength anymore. But back in 1999, my mind was just flooded with this. I was literally haunted day in, day out by the melody for this song. And then I worked out the chord structure and put it together. And then I stumbled over the lyrics until my wife, primarily, and my brother gave me a helping hand. And then America, My Home was born. And it was just my way of carrying a sentiment in song about the responsibility we all have to preserve and defend the freedoms that we enjoy. And the premise is, as is part of the premise of this program, that that freedom only works. Freedom is entirely dependent upon the character of people. If you give people who are decent, who have a solid internal moral compass, if you give people freedom, who are so solid in their own character development, have such principle in their heart, and observe those principles in their daily life, they live those principles out. You give those people maximum freedom and don't interfere with them, don't tie them back, don't hold them back, they'll do fantastic things. They'll innovate. They'll not only make a decent life for themselves, but they'll create opportunities for others. They'll work hard and they'll prosper, and they'll make it possible for others to prosper. That's how it works. But in our character-disturbed age, unfortunately, because we can't trust each other with increasing regularity, because we can't trust each other, and because so many folks have such weak internal moral compasses, there's the constant temptation to try and impose order through more and more and more restrictions on our freedom. And this is just the most unfortunate circumstance that we can have. And the solution, the only real ultimate solution, is changing hearts one at a time. And I can only do my part. But we can all do our part by being the kind of people that we're called to be and by setting an example. This last election cycle was, in my opinion, a travesty, a true travesty. That we would even be holding up some of the folks that we were holding up as individuals to admire in any way, as role models. and all the stuff that we witnessed and that our children witnessed, with all the mudslinging and all the unfortunate, uh, ridiculous antics on all sides, save perhaps one. I thought there was one person in the race that demonstrated character a lot of the time. Didn't agree with everything he had to say, but I thought, of course, he got beaten up pretty badly and got sent away by a system that really didn't want him to succeed. But at least I thought he was a decent person. I think he is a decent person. At least on relatively speaking, by today's standards, for sure. I remember talking with the folks at one of my workshops about the very definition of what constitutes these days a disorder of personality or character. We have to change our definitions because for decades, literally for decades, psychologists and psychiatrists have officially categorized people as having disorders of personality or character when their ways of seeing things, their ways of thinking about things, and their ways of doing things were so extraordinary, so extreme, so inflexible, or so deviant from the norm that they caused a good deal of chaos in their lives and distress and were dysfunctional. But unfortunately, what we're witnessing today is we're witnessing a lot of really disturbed and impaired characters, seriously unhealthy characters, who are not outside of the mainstream at all. You couldn't possibly say that their way of seeing things and doing things is all that different from the norm, because the norms have changed. Character disturbance has become the phenomenon of our age. And so that changes everything. You know, I was reading an article about one of the folks in the music entertainment industry, Kanye West, reading several articles about the fact that in professional speak, we say he has decompensated into a paranoid state. Well, I got to tell you, folks, you got to be pretty much a narcissist to start with. And there isn't any doubt about that with this young man, unfortunately, to decompensate along those lines. You know, because when you are so great, and when you know you are so great, and you think of yourself as so much all that, when things really start to go wrong in your life, you cannot blame yourself, because you've convinced yourself you're all that. So the only place to find fault is in something or someone else. And that's how folks who think that they're all that they think they have it all together, that they think they are superior, special. That's how they, in the face of really dire coping failures, can become much, much sicker. That's one of the points I was making to folks in my workshops at all the venues this year. And that is that there's an there's an inextricable relationship between the disturbances that people have that bring them to the attention of a mental health professional, the kinds of symptoms, uh, disorders that they suffer. There's a relationship between those things and their basic personality or character. Uh, for example, and I gave this example at one of the workshops, there are these personality types who are inordinately emotionally dependent. We call these many times passive dependent personalities. These are folks that don't trust themselves very well. They don't trust their ability to cope very well because they lack skills, they lack coping skills. And because they do, they hesitate to assert themselves. And because they hesitate to assert themselves, they never uh, give themselves the chance, basically, to experience some success and develop some sense of self efficacy, a sense of personal power or capability. And as a result, they become excessively emotionally reliant on those that they believe or perceive to be uh, more competent, more capable, more powerful than they are. And they're very much at risk for entering into relationships that are unhealthy. But nonetheless, my point is that when folks who have this kind of emotional dependency uh, lose uh, sources of emotional support, they're very often vulnerable to certain kinds of conditions, like a depression or some bouts of anxiety, because they need those other people in their life so badly to give them a sense of stability and security, and then those sources of support drop away or move away or pass away or whatever the case may be, and then that leaves them all alone. They feel inadequate. They don't feel like they can cope on their own, and therefore they develop these symptoms. So there's always a relationship between the problems that a person has in their life and their underlying character. And so what I was trying to really impress on all the professionals I was speaking to is how important it is to really uh, work on character strengthening when you're working with folks in therapy. It's not enough. It's not enough to just resolve a situational problem. You want to give people the kind of strength of character that will carry them through life's situations and battles and help build a kind of an immune system, so to speak, a psychological immune system, so that they're able to handle the stresses and the strains and the circumstances that can present themselves. Now, even the healthiest of characters can experience some problems in the face of extreme stress, but it sure does help. It sure does pay to have solidity and strength of character. So that's one of the things I was emphasizing um, in my workshops to the professionals uh, during this last round of workshops. And I have some articles about that too on the internet, not just on my blog at manipulative-people.com, but also on the other blog that I write for at counselingresource.com. That's the blog Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life, based in the United Kingdom, with the URL counselingresource.com. That's counseling with two L's, because that's how the Brits spell it, counselingresource.com. Have plenty of articles there as well. So If you want to join the conversation tonight, once again, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'm happy to take your call. I hope that our phones system is working in a way that I can patch you through tonight. We've had some problems, I know we have, but hopefully we can patch you through tonight without so much trouble as we've had the last time. We've done a few things to tweak the system. We thought we had it taken care of a couple of shows ago. It turned out that we didn't quite have it taken care of as well as we thought, but perhaps the latest tweaking we've done has done the trick. So once again, if you want to join the conversation, give us a call at 718-717-8296, and I'll be happy to take your call. I wanted to say, too, a little something about this time of the year. This is the time of the year when I get a little weary. Not because, I truly, I love this time of the year. There are so many warm sentiments that float around. This is a time of year. I happen to be active in the choir at our church, so we sing a lot of inspirational pieces. There's an awful lot of goodwill in the fellowship among fellow participants, a lot of good cheer this time of year. But the world is a really unstable place right now, particularly unstable place. And there are places in the world where not just radical ideologies, but severely disturbed characters, megalomaniacs, severely psychopathic individuals are at the helm of government. North Korea being one of those places. And it's just really frightening because we have been kind of asleep. We have really been asleep at the switch, so to speak. And I really fear for our children. I fear for what may be ahead in the way of turmoil. And I fear also where our priorities seem to be. You know, there are some things that are just more fundamental than others. But we've been neglecting some of the fundamental things because most folks are just far, far too busy. Most folks are pretty well stressed out to maintain the kind of lifestyles we maintain. We have most often two people working 40 hours plus in a family. And the family, of course, is the breeding ground, is the training ground, is the primary factory, as it will, for character development. It's the nurturing ground. It's where it all takes place. It's the primary one. And so with basically no one at home except for a relatively short period of time, and with children exposed to so much, it's really hard to give folks the grounding that they need to survive in this troubled world. And we've become lax on a lot of things. So this is a time of year where I have some very mixed feelings. Some very joyous feelings. It's a time for connecting with family and friends. This year, it's going to be particularly wonderful for us because I have a son, my youngest son, who has always been fairly close, who's been away now for quite some time, many miles away. And for the first time this year, he'll be making a trip home for Christmas for a few days. And that will be just so wonderful. I'm fortunate to have my other son live close by. And my other son, my older son, and his wife have given us the most beautiful grandchildren. So we always have some family close by, but this year it'll be a little extra special because some of the family that's been separated will be together, and I'm looking forward to that. At any rate, I'm not sure how your Christmas holidays are going to be going and what you're hoping for the new year. But if you want to join the conversation and give us a call, please do so at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296, and I'll be happy to take your call. Well, once again this week, we had some news, big news, about the passing of Fidel Castro in Cuba. And it's a very interesting thing to see on the streets of Havana, many folks taking to the streets to pay respects and to mourn and to cry, and then on the streets of Miami to see many expatriates parading in the streets and celebrating the passing of someone who they don't have very high regard for. There's always two sides to every story. And the Cuban story is one of those. And if ever there was a testament to the importance of character on both sides of the story, it would be what happened with that troubled little island. For a long time before the government was overthrown there in a communist revolution, there were some nefarious operators taking advantage of things in Cuba. It was one of the places where organized crime based here had a strong foothold, and also the person who headed the government at the time before the revolution, Batista, was pretty much a dictator and was pretty corrupt. And there was good reason for the people to be dissatisfied, or at least some people to be dissatisfied. And this is how it seems to go with history. If only decency had prevailed in the first place, there would have not needed to be, or there wouldn't have been any impetus for the tragedy that then took place. And so what happened is that a revolution overthrew Batista, and then a communist regime was put in its place. One form of tyranny for another. And while some injustices were indeed rectified, many other injustices were done. Many innocent lives were lost. Many. And many felt they had to flee. Property was confiscated. Whole families were separated. So we never seem to learn our lessons. We always seem to let things get so bad that there has to be, or there is at least the potential for, some kind of forceful backlash. And many times in that backlash, the situation can get worse. We never seem to learn that lesson. And it all starts at the individual level. We're only great collectively when we're great individually. We're only of solid character collectively when we're of solid character individually. That's just the way it is. It's always been that way. Perhaps you do agree with me, perhaps you don't agree with me. But if you have a comment to make or want to join the conversation tonight, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296, and I'll be happy to take your call. Well, another big announcement for you folks out there who are keeping tabs of my book writing activities. We have 2 new publications of In Sheep's Clothing. The Brazilian edition is out, and also the Chinese edition. I have not yet gotten the artwork for the cover. I should very soon. But In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People will be finally in China. China is a very tough market because China is one of those places where intellectual property is not very not very well respected, shall I say? So it's really an accomplishment when you can get a book published there under proper publishing rights terms. So we'll just have to see how this goes, whether or not people actually get a hold of my work or end up getting a bootleg copy in some way. So we'll just have to see how that goes. But we're in the China market now with In Sheep's Clothing, and I couldn't be happier. It'd be amazing to see what happens there in China. And I'm so very glad that we're also now in the Portuguese language in South America, in Brazil. Wanted to be there with my books for a long time, and I got the word not too long ago that we're already in print. So I'm very happy about that. And if you want more information about that, you can go to the blog at manipulative-people.com. I have some announcements to make about not only those new editions, but also several others. So just take a gander over there to manipulative-people.com. Also, make sure you avail yourself of all the hundreds of timely articles there. And I see someone here is chatting with me on Skype, and I got a message here. I'm going to go read that and see what someone is wanting to respond to. So let me see if I can do that real quick. Looks like I'm not able to pull up that window just yet. I see our friend I see our friend Vince has sent me something, but I cannot read it. Sorry about that. Um, Wish I could, but I cannot do so. Not sure what's going on there. Having nothing but trouble with this interface lately, and I'm not sure what the problem is. I think it may have to do. I have to tell you, folks, we are uh, our program, the operating platform is Skype based, and it recently updated to a new version. And when it did, a lot of things changed. So I have somebody that wants to call in, and I'm going to see if I can add him to the conversation, and then maybe we can have a conversation. So let me try and do that right now. I'm going to try and add here. Uh, are you added successfully there, Vince? No, I don't think so. But we'll try one more time here. Trying to add. Are you there?
Yes, there we go. I'll kill this player. Hi, Dr. Simon.
Well, I'm glad we were able to do this.
Yes, we made it happen.
Yeah.
Very proud.
Well,
so from chat, we have a little question here, and it kind of ties to my perspective a bit. Talking about how we got to where we are, I'd say the trail's pretty littered, and it's a long way, and society's changed, and the character is displayed more openly in the aggression. And a couple of your past articles, you're speaking about on the human nature and aggression, and how we've fought our way in life through history, and it has developed our character in a sense.
uh-huh.
And when we're talking specifically then from your other article on understanding article, anger in it, you're talking about how it's a misunderstood emotion, and it comes from our basic emotions, our base instincts, and part of our fight and flight. I know where you live at. Used to be, probably, if you've lived there for a long time, it used to be rural area, and the city now has encroached upon it. But I'm sure you would have seen the changes from the 60s and 70s and on through. And even now in the country, it used to be people that go to the city, if they were going to have a little other than what's accepted for character, especially in the country. So they go to the cities and congregate to hide in amongst people.
Yeah. Yeah, there's hiding room among large numbers. Yes.
Mm-hmm. But it's out in the open now. People use these tactics of the aggression, and people with less than perhaps the best type of character are been manipulative their whole life, and it's a system for them. And it doesn't even mean, I think probably the greatest portion of your listenership will be people that have been abused. And that probably be in whether be married or whatever, or family relationships and so on. But it even goes into our community, and it's built out, where somebody who would beat their wife in the old days, it was hidden, and but
Yes.
now, it's nothing for just people to openly exert the flaws.
Yeah. You mentioned something there, Vince. Let me just chime in. When I was doing workshops all this year, that was a frequent question asked of me of the clinicians. They said, "Is it really true that character dysfunction is more commonplace today than it ever used to be, or are we just realizing more? Is it more out in the open?" And my point to them is, when I do these workshops, and this is the way I write about it too, is we've always had dysfunctional characters in our midst, and some things used to be hidden. What's different is what professionals have to deal with for the most part. What's different is that gone are the days pretty much when mental health professionals had to deal with people who were literally making themselves sick with too much worry and too much, basically, too much conscientiousness. Uh, uh, we used to affectionately give the term neurosis to individuals who were so overly conscientious that they were either giving themselves ulcers or headaches or whatever the case may be. And those were the folks that we primarily saw in counseling of one type or another. These days, we see more folks whose lives are a shipwreck because they haven't gotten their character act together yet. So my point to them was, whereas we've always had character disturbance and we've always had bad things, some things used to be hidden, now they're more out in the open. What mental health professionals have to deal with today is very, very different for the most part, and they haven't been very well equipped to deal with the problem. That's been my point in all the workshops I've been doing.
Excellent. And most people that are in treatment would probably be there not by their own choice, considering the system. And then they learn just to manipulate the system and say what's need to be said. And when you're dealing with people on a personal level, beyond whether they're in counseling or not, it's they're up and down, and sometimes that fight or flight, sometimes you do have to withdraw yourself, and for some people it might be more difficult to do so than others.
Uh-huh.
And I'd like to say real quick, I shared some of your post outs from your blogs and the announcement from UCY.tv. So thanks for coming over. A couple of folks in particular, Victory Through Vegetable, Becky and Julieta. Thanks, everybody. And I know you're appreciated. Your work is certainly by me, and I really enjoy the learning and the lessons.
Well, thank you. And, my life has been kind of like it's been like a fairy tale. I tell you, it's just, I was telling folks at the last workshop, how much more edification can you get than the two things that happen to me regularly? I find myself empowering victims who've been in toxic relationships, and also helping people who have disturbed characters grow into better people. How much more rewarding a life can you get professionally than that? I just don't know. And then to have the response that I've had to my written works and to the blog, to have, in Sheep's Clothing will be 21 years in print. This is unfathomable to me.
Awesome.
Short of the road. Go ahead.
Let me interrupt. I'm sorry. I just have to say that that is a long road, and we have to find it ourselves. And I really appreciate, again, your work, and it has meaning. And that a lot of people don't understand that servant, the reward that a servant gets, and being a servant to their fellow man. So thank you very much, Dr. Simon, and I'm going to hang up so that you can close your program. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Vince. I appreciate it very much, and I'm glad we were able to connect.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, here we go again. This is just another one of the things that I've got to be grateful for. And I just can't imagine a more fulfilling life. And I just can't imagine not being here again with you next week. So I hope you'll join us next week at the same time, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central Time on UCY.tv for another edition of Character Matters. And I wish you a very happy holiday season, and join us again next week for another edition of the program. I'm Dr. George Simon. Thanks for tuning in. Take care and good night. Well, I see our bump.